Good morning, guys, and welcome to another weekly wrap-up. As you know, this is where we talk about everything that came out on both our blogs as well as the YouTube channel, so that if you missed something, you know where it is and get it all in one place, so that you can just click on it and go there and read or watch or whatever. So, on Monday, on my blog, I talked about audiobooks, specifically what I do while I'm listening to them, and I sort of talk about my history with audiobooks, where I started, and why recently I've been enjoying them much more, and how they have actually helped me increase my reading count quite a lot. So if you are interested in what I do while I listen to audiobooks, definitely go check out that post.
On Monday, I had nothing near as intellectual. I did a 16-book back-to-school book haul. So as fast as I possibly could, I ran through all of the books that I've picked up from my classes this year. Some of them you've already seen, especially if you watched like the after anthology review that Taylor and I did. Some of them you will see, and some of them you will never ever see, because that's how school reading goes. But if you're interested in what that looks like, go ahead and check out that video. On Tuesday, Michaela and I brought to you guys another one of our Betwixt the Books discussions. So this was a live discussion that you could have joined us live for if you wanted to. If you didn't, that's fine. We are still really cool people to listen to speak. Maybe you know this since you subscribe to the YouTube channel. But anyways, we talked about DNFing books, which means did not finish, what our processes are to that, and then we shared some very interesting stories about our feelings about DNFing and why we do it, and I even shared one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me in my almost 8 years of blogging. So, watch it. It is worth your time.
On Wednesday this week, I went back to Wednesday's comic book day. While I haven't had a job that allowed me to actually go and visit a comic store and pick up new comics, I decided that I would talk about sort of my history with comics and answer the age-old question of Marvel or DC. Spoiler alert, the answer is neither, but you'll have to go see my post to know why that is.
On Thursday, I had a Thesis Thursday post. Imagine that. This was all about all of the ideas percolating in my head for the second chapter of my thesis, which deals with YA book covers. And so I talked about some of the trends that were most problematic to me and all these thoughts that I had about them. And it's basically me going, blah, have you noticed these things about YA book covers? So you should read that and tell me that you have, so I feel slightly less insane.
I did something really nerve-wracking on Thursday, and that was that I published a poetry review. Now, I don't often read poetry, so I was really scared to talk about it, because when you don't read it a lot, it's difficult to talk about it. You can't compare it to other things, but I did my best. So if you would like to see me talk about Your Invitation to A Modest Breakfast by Hannah Gamble, a collection of poetry, then you should go check out that video.
It feels like quite a few moons now, but on Friday I finally published that ARC review of Lions in the Garden by Chelsea Luna that I've been talking about ever since I read the ARC forever ago. But that book is coming out soon, so the ARC review was finally released. It wasn't a fabulous review, sadly. I did enjoy the book in parts, but it had the strangest plot, feeling, structure, character thing going on. So if you were interested to hear more about that, please read that review and see if you would like to pick that book up when it comes out in a few days.
I also had an ARC review on Friday. Mine was of The Last Man by Tobias. It is a young adult fantasy story, and I actually really enjoyed it, despite been having a hard time with fantasy stuff lately, and to figure out why exactly I liked this one more than the other ones that I've been looking at, you should definitely go read my post about it. It was interesting, so go check that out.
Surprise, surprise! This is the part of the video where we talk about what we read this week, and I get to go first, which is good because I read very little interesting this week. And two of them, I didn't read, like, the whole book. All three of them were for school, but the two I didn't read like the whole book, but I read enough of it and I had to suffer through it and discuss it. So I'm counting them as books I read. Fight me. And the first one was Inventing Human Rights by Lynn Hunt. This was for my writing senior seminar. And very, very interesting theories in this about how, like, the rise of empathy and human rights came from, in part, epistolary novels, and about how torture went from being mainstream to looked down upon. And she's a fine writer, and by fine I mean, like, okay. And so it was, like, accessible, easy reading that was interesting, but she did tend to repeat herself and didn't do as much depth as I wanted out of her argument, so that was kind of frustrating. But yeah, if you're into this at all, it's like a very easy thing to read. The second thing I read was also for my senior writing seminar, and I read most of this. It is Curse of the Self, Self-Awareness, Egotism, and Quality of Human Life by Mark Leary. Not anywhere near as accessible as Inventing Human Rights, but had some very interesting theories about why humans are the way they are, and like our egos and stuff like that. Don't read this if you want to continue feeling good about yourself, because that won't happen after you finish this. He's also slightly a bit of a blowhard to me, just saying, but interesting theories if for some reason you want this thing. And finally, the last book that I read this week is a beautiful, charming little thing called A Natural History of Dragons and Unicorns by Paul and Karen Johnsgaard. This is for the Writing, Fantasy, and Sci-Fi class that Taylor and I are in together, and while you will not see us reviewing this book, it was very, very charming. It's like a pretend guidebook about if dragons and unicorns actually existed, and like pretends to be very scientific about the different species and stuff like that. So very, very charming, very cute. And I read it in a single sitting, which was really awesome. So yeah, that's what I read.
So, not surprisingly, I read this week Your Invitation to a Modest Breakfast. I did that review of it on the YouTube channel, so you should go watch that to hear what I thought of it. But poetry, that happened. I also read The Last Man by Tobias Wade this week, which, obviously, again, I did a review of it. Go check that out. Young adult fantasy. It happened. The last book that I completed was The Tiger's Wife by Taio Brett. This is literary fiction. I believe it won the Bailey's Prize for Women in 2011 when it came out. I think that's when it came out. It was beautiful and sort of a mystery involving a woman going to another country to give vaccinations to orphans, and her grandfather dies, and she's trying to figure out sort of the circumstances around her grandfather's death. And yeah, it was good. If you like that sort of stuff, do that. There's lots of imagery, and I'm planning to do a review of this next week, so I will talk about that more in depth when I do that. Remember last week when I said that I was listening to The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and I was like, maybe it'll be done by last weekend. Maybe it'll be next week. Who knows? Still not done. So this is going to be an ongoing saga of Michaela tries to finish the 24 hours of audiobook that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I do have the feeling that I might want to pick up the actual physical copy, because it's more densely packed than I usually like with an audiobook. But I don't know yet. So we're gonna keep pushing on with that. It might show up next week as something I finished, or I might tag it on at the end like this and be like, still not done. Working on it. One day it will be done.
That is this week's weekly wrap-up. We hope that you've seen something that you might want to see, or maybe you have already seen all of this stuff, in which case, good for you, you're our favorite person. Speaking of favorite people, please remember that we are still running that giveaway for those 3 contemporary books. So please, please, please go enter that, especially if like you already subscribed to this YouTube channel, because you already have like an automatic entry into that, as long as you put your name down and actually enter it. So go do that thing. We thank you, and we can't wait to give away those books. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon. Bye!